Hola amigos, bien o no, y saludos desde Medellín. Hoy cambia un poco el tema. Am, este es como un tema que yo estoy hablando hoy con algunos como estudiantes y yo creo es puede ser muy útil para ustedes, entonces yo voy a compartir. El tema de hoy es reuniones, meetings, meetings. Y cómo puede preparar para responder, especialmente en preguntas. So today we're going to talk about meetings and particularly how we deal with answering questions in meetings. So this is a topic I was working with one of my students today, but I think it's very useful, it's very practical, so I'm going to share that one with you today. So clearly nowadays a lot of meetings are done virtually, so you might not even be in the room with the people who are in the meeting, which makes it a bit tricky because we have other problems with can you hear the person, are you sure they were talking to you, this kind of thing. So to bear this in mind, we have some standard advice to work you through with meetings, particularly thinking of this, you're doing this in your second language, so it's going to be a bit trickier. First thing to remember, keywords. With this, don't get too hung up on, oh, I need to remember exact sentences and special phrases, or I need to take notes of everything the person says. I think that will be a mistake. It's going to get you stuck trying to write everything down. It's very difficult to do. I would rely on keywords as people are talking about the topic as that develops. And that way, even if the speaker changes and there's lots of people in the meeting, you can just take notes of keywords as the conversation is developing. And then if the conversation suddenly stops, which is probably the clue that you're about to be asked a question, you only need to look at the last couple of keywords you wrote down and know that this is where the conversation has got to. Now we're talking about these key topics. Because really the thing we're worried about in the meeting is not so much what the other people are saying, it's not knowing when it's our turn to speak. Because if we just have to do a presentation, that's a whole different thing. You know, we can present that quite easily, we can practice that, we know what we're going to say. But if we're listening to be asked to answer questions, that can be a bit tricky. So here's some advice hopefully you will find helpful if you're in that situation. So during the meeting, just keep track of the keywords so you know where the conversation is going. And then if you get that dreaded question, something like, Graham, can you say something about, or Graham, can you answer that question? You will know that the keywords, the last couple you wrote down, are where the conversation got to. So now you know at least what we're generally talking about. Now we can prepare to answer the question. Something else that's very useful within meetings, particularly where there's plenty of people, try really hard to remember people's names. I know often nowadays they're kind of like captioned, aren't they, if you're doing this on like video conferencing, which is very helpful. So first thing I would do is repeat back the name of the person that's asked you to answer the question, because that shows that you've basically, I'm taking the microphone from you, thank you so much. So Bob, thank you Bob, yes, I'd be happy to answer that question. And then address your answer to the person that asked that question. So in this case, let's assume it's Susan. So he goes, okay, so Susan, thanks for that great question. So again, we're saying thank you, and we're acknowledging the really great questions she's asked us. Thanks, Susan, that's a great question. And now here's the trick. With any types of questions you get, the first thing you should always do, remember, is check you've understood the question, because you might not have heard them properly. Maybe your notes weren't as accurate as you thought. So you think you're going to ask a question on this topic, but maybe that wasn't what was asked. So first thing we should do is check understanding. So we would say something like that. So, oh, thanks, Susan. That's a great question. So you'd like me to say something a bit more about our production process. Is that right? So I'm just confirming that she's asking me something about, let's say, the production process. So you asked me about the production process. Is that right? You'd like to know more about that? That's a quick answer for the other person. That'll be like a yes, please tell me more, or no, I've meant this instead. So you'll get that question clarified, but really, okay, so you've clarified what the question's about. And then this is something particularly useful. Rather than answering the question straight away, you can ask your own question to get some extra information to help you answer the question more accurately and more fully. So you acknowledge the question. So thanks, Susan, that's a great question. You check you understood the question correctly. So you're asking me about the production process and the lead time on this product. Is that right? If you say something like, yeah, that's right, I'm interested in the lead time on the production. Okay, you can say, now what we're going to do then is we're going to ask a qualifying question. Now by qualifying question, we're looking for a common problem that maybe affects that type of thing you're being asked about. So somewhere within that process that you're discussing, we've taken notes of the key words of this, remember, so we know that, let's say, production process, one of the problems you generally have in that case is this. So this would be a qualifying question. So you're going to use this opportunity to get some more information from that person before you give your proper answer. So you would say something like this. So you've thanked them for the question, you've checked that you've understood what their question was, and then you say, before I answer that, can I just ask you something about the, let's say, the limits of this production process? What standard are we using the manufacturing to? That will be basically a common problem that you know affects that part of the production process, something perhaps that's often overlooked, something that you generally have to check again with the client, or it always causes you problems. That's your chance to ask that question. It's a check question. They can come back and give you some more information. Yeah, our process is runs within this international standard. Okay, so now you know that, then you can give your answer more clearly. You say, okay, so since the process is ranked within this international standard, for us this means we would do this, 1, 2, 3. Then you give your answer. So you're thanking them for the question, that's courteous. You check their names, again, you're showing you're listening to them particularly, you're showing attention to them. You've checked that you've understood the question. Very important. So now we're not answering a completely wrong question. We're not wasting energy. We're answering the correct question. And we've asked them for a bit more information. What for us is a qualifying question. Give us a little bit more information about the context of this question so we can give a really clear and really helpful answer. That's our process. So have a think of that. This hopefully should help you, because clearly if you're the only one who's trying to take notes in what for you is the second language, the conversation could be going quite fast. So if you keep track of the conversation by noting the key words as they appear, this should help you track, okay, where are we in the conversation? This means that really, if you're asked a question, or can you answer that, or can you say something about it, all you really need to do is give back the last couple of key words, because that's clearly what the topic's about. Check your understanding of the question, phrase that using those last couple of key words. Okay, so Susan, I understand you're asking me something about the production process. Is that right? You'll get a little bit of collaboration and confirmation from that person. Yes, I'd like to know more about this. Okay, that's great. Now you've both shown that you're listening to each other, you've heard each other, and you're talking about the right topic. And then, because you know, based on keywords and your expertise, you can start linking particular keywords to common problems you know in your industry. So if I'm talking about production process, I know normally I need to understand something about these 1 or 2 points. So that will be a really good keyword to link to a common problem that you can put in the qualifying question. Something like, in this case, we said, okay, can you tell me what kind of international standards you use? Because you know that's a problem that you generally have around that issue. And then you can give a fuller answer. And you sound really helpful because you've checked again with the other person in terms of what do they really need. You're asking them to be really specific about the context of what they want, and you're giving a really full answer. This is different from, can you answer that question? You just go, yes, the answer is 241. Now that might be the right answer, but really that's a very short answer. Your risk of maybe answering the wrong question, if you haven't quite heard what the question was, you might give a nice technical answer, but it could be the wrong answer. So this way, by checking understanding and potentially asking a qualifying question, you get the chance to give a fuller answer that's going to be more helpful. And as well, it gives you a little bit of time to think about what you really want to say. And that can be important. You're playing for time. There we go. So that was the ideas that came out of our class today. I hope you find these ones useful. Déjame saber, como siempre, en los comentarios. But for now, from Medellin, I say cheerio.